This is CNN Breaking News.
There's breaking news in the very partisan battle on the House Intelligence Committee. The Republican chairman and the ranking Democrat, they have just met. Here's what the Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff just said.
I think it was certainly not an easy meeting, but an important meeting. And we're also trying to go forward with the hearings. We have agreed to go forward with a closed hearing that the chair requested with Directors Comey and Rogers. We have also asked the chair to go along with our request that the hearing we had agreed to, which was scheduled with Sally Yates, Directors Clapper and Brennan, also go forward.
That's Adam Schiff, the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. Let's discuss this and a lot more. And Gloria Borger, you're with us. There's a lot going on in this entire investigation. And not only on the House side, they're trying to make some peace there between the chairman and the ranking Democrat. The Senate side, they're going forward not only with today's open hearings, but with quiet, closed-door hearings they're going to be having, including with the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner.
Right, and we don't know that that's been scheduled yet, and we don't know when in their sequence it's going to come. But I've been told by a source familiar with what Jared might say is that what Jared is going to say is that he met with the Russian ambassador and with this official at a Russian bank, Sergei Gorkov, because he was trying to establish a back channel at that point during the transition to Putin. And they were trying to find the right person to engage with on establishing that back channel. So first he meets with the ambassador. He says to the ambassador, "Who should I meet with?" And the ambassador suggests this gentleman, Gorkov. Now, if anybody had done a Google search on Gorkov, they would have found out that he is with a bank that has been sanctioned by the United States government, and he has direct ties to Putin. Apparently, I was told that did not occur at the transition, that Gorkov was not vetted, that Jared Kushner met with him as a result, that sanctions were not discussed, that personal business dealings were not discussed, but that Jared wanted to find this back channel, and that when Rex Tillerson became tapped as Secretary of State, that no longer needed to be done because, of course, Tillerson has
What you're learning
ties.
is that Ambassador Kislyak, the Russian ambassador, he recommended this so-called back channel through this banker?
Through this banker, Gorkov. And then Kislyak wanted to meet with Jared Kushner again, and Kushner said, "I don't need to," so he sent a low-level staffer to meet with the ambassador the next time.
Interesting. Let me go to Jeff Zeleny. He's over at the White House in the briefing room. Jeff, multiple breaking stories we're following, including this White House staff shakeup. Update our viewers on that.
Indeed, Wolf, and we do expect to hear that shortly here at the press secretary when Sean Spicer has his daily briefing here. There is a bit of a staff shakeup going on here in the West Wing, and it's the deputy chief of staff, someone who's not necessarily familiar to viewers, but Wolf, I can tell you, is very familiar inside the halls here at the White House on Capitol Hill and at the Republican National Committee. And this is something that really is the culmination of one of the fallout from the collapse of the healthcare defeat. This is something that is coming as the White House is trying to regroup and sort of re-engage. And part of that is re-engaging with the outside as well. And the deputy chief of staff here at the White House is Katie Walsh. She worked at the RNC before she came here to the White House. She'll be leaving here, and she'll be going to head up one of the outside groups as a senior advisor, sort of to help the president's agenda outside of the White House here, Wolf. But it is also a sign that things are not going along as smoothly here as they would like, legislatively speaking. Of course, the defeat of that bill last week, one of the biggest defeats of this administration so far, so they are trying to put things back in order here and get things back on track. So this is one of the shakeups. We're not sure if it's the last shoe to fall here, but it's the one that's happening right now, Wolf.
Yeah, I suspect it won't be the last shoe. There's often some shakeups early on in new administrations, but it comes curiously just as Ivanka Trump takes on a major new official role, has a major office in the West Wing at the White House, not just an informal advisor, but she's now a special assistant to the president. She won't be taking a salary or anything like that, but she is now a government employee.
Indeed. I mean, Ivanka Trump will not be taking a salary, Wolf, but she will be a top advisor, of course, she has basically been playing that role for the last several weeks or so. She's in a lot of meetings. Her advice is certainly heard and listened to here at the West Wing, but this essentially formalizes that role. Now, we do not believe these staff changes are linked necessarily, but Ivanka Trump is playing a very important role here at the West Wing, trying to reboot and reshape and get her father's agenda back on message here and things moving more smoothly. So we'll see how that sort of plays out, Wolf. But there is some grumbling from some other staff members we've spoken to as well that Ivanka Trump, obviously is the first among equals because she can't be fired, of course. So this is a new dynamic that's injecting itself into the West Wing here, Wolf. But she and her husband, Jared Kushner, another senior advisor, now two of the most important people next to the president, who obviously have his ear, Wolf.
And Laura Coates, I want to bring you into this. You're our CNN legal analyst. Any ethical or legal issues in having her, the daughter of the president, as an official in the White House?
It's more of an issue of perception than it is legality. Remember, the Justice Department has already said and issued a letter saying that the White House does not need to follow the same anti-nepotism rules that came under JFK when he couldn't hire his brother and when Jimmy Carter couldn't hire his son as an intern. The theory being that the White House as a non-executive agency does not have to follow the same rules. However, you do have to follow the conflicts of laws, the interest laws, and about issues regarding ethics. Now that she's an employee, she's more beholden to it. Of course, the only legal recourse you have is you can't get a salary if you don't follow them. Well, she doesn't have a salary, so there's not really a whole lot of recourse you can have. But remember, Hillary Clinton back in '93 had to do the same sort of dance with the Secret Court of Appeals when she said, "Can I serve on the task force for health reform for then President Clinton?" And they said again, the White House, as an own agency, does not need to follow the nepotism laws.
And I know, Gloria, you've been doing some reporting on this shakeup over at the White House. Katie Walsh, the deputy White House chief of staff, moving out.
Right. I think that it's sort of an open secret that the folks who were at the RNC and are now at the White House have been pretty frustrated.
Including the White House chief of staff,
trying to make the kind of trains run on time. Healthcare was a disaster. It's not as organized as it should be inside the White House. Katie Walsh is somebody who was considered sort of an ultimate professional inside the White House. I was told by one source that her loss is a tremendous loss. I think she was frustrated, to be very honest. And I think that Reince Priebus, Jared Kushner, and Steve Bannon were all looking for a place for her to land because I think she wanted a place to land. And this job, it seems to be the perfect fit.
The outside job.
For her. The outside job, running this independent group that is going to provide air cover for Donald Trump's White House. It's the perfect place for her to land. And I will tell you that in talking to somebody both outside the White House and inside the White House today, they do believe it's going to be a big loss for them over there.
And it comes at a time when there's so much going on. And Nia, I want to bring you into this as well. And next week, the Chinese president is coming to the United States. He'll be meeting with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago down in Palm Beach.
Yeah, apparently the Chinese leader wanted to have a more informal environment. Of course, Mar-a-Lago is informal. It's a big fancy club. Golfing goes on down there. And President Trump met with the Japanese leader down there. But this will be a tough conversation. I mean, it hasn't been exactly a good relationship that this president established from the get-go with the Chinese leader. Had to sort of walk back this idea of recognizing China and pledge that the United States would recognize the one China rule. And Donald Trump has also talked about currency manipulation, has said that China is raping this country in terms of currency in trade. So this will be a tough, I think, conversation, and maybe it's best that it's at Mar-a-Lago and not at the White House.
Everybody stand by. Once again, the White House press briefing is about to begin with Sean Spicer, but we're also following right now a major announcement from the U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross. Today, Ross announcing the government has partnered with AT&T to build a broadband network for first responders. Our congressional correspondent, Sunlen Serfati, is joining us now with details of this important announcement. Sunlen, I understand this idea was born out of the 9/11 Commission. Is that right?
That's right. Well, if this was a big problem that was identified on 9/11 among first responders, that the network went down and they weren't able to fully communicate with each other as they handled the crisis. So this was one of the main recommendations of the 9/11 Commission. What it does is it sets up a high-speed network for first responders to use as they deal with crises. And the AT&T is backing this up with over $40 billion today for this effort.